Welcome back friends, this is Fraser from Art Studio. So today we'll learn to create a very simple and a very quick ball rig with the stretch and squash deformer. So you can easily create this rig. So let's get started. So let's begin by taking a sphere, simply polyprimitive, and move it by 1 unit on this y-axis so that it is completely on the grid. Let's name this as ball geo. Let's create the controllers now. So go to the curve surfaces and create a circle. Now duplicate it and scale it for the main controller. So this will be the main controller. So let's name it as main controller. We'll create a couple more. So we'll duplicate this once more. For our stretch and squash handle, a stretch and squash deformer. So we can name it as stretch controller, right? So for the rotate controller, we'll again move it 1 unit to the center, usually rotating along the x-axis. So we'll just rotate it along this x-axis and just scale it a bit and name it as rotate. Right? So you got our 3 controllers: the stretch controller, the rotate controller, and the main controller. I would also like to color the controllers, so we can do that very quickly by going into the attribute editor, and under object display, if you scroll down to drawing overrides, over here you will find the enable overrides option. So enable it. Once enabled, you can change the color. So for the main, I'll be keeping the color, you can keep it red for main. Okay, so that's your main controller. And for this one, again, enable override. This one you can keep yellow. So that's your rotate controller, and that's your stretch and squash controller. So we can keep this green. So we have our 3 controllers, 3 different colors. So it will be easier for us to identify and also see it in the viewport. So once the model is set up, it's now time to rig the ball. For rigging the ball, we're using the squash deformer, right? So select the ball, go to the deformers menu, pull down to nonlinear and select squash. As you select the squash deformer, you'll see the squash deformer handle appears over here, right? Along the channel box, if you go under the input and hit on the squash one deformer node, you can see we have the attributes over here. So let's quickly discuss what it does. So factor basically influences the stretching and squashing, okay? And using expand, you can control how much you want to influence the diameter of the stretch and squash, okay? Currently, if you see, it's influencing from both top and bottom, okay? So for this rig, we don't want it to influence from the bottom. So for that, we'll take the translate Y and bring it to 0. So that will move the handle to 0 point. And to get the influences correct, we'll hit the low bound to 0, okay? And the high bound will make it 2, okay? Now you can see that the low bound is fixed on the grid and the high bound is over here on top. You can change the high bound based on the size of your mesh. If we try with the factor, you can see that the stretch is taking place only on the upward direction, right? And the bottom or the base is fixed, and it's squashing also till the base, right? So we'll just move this to 0. So the handle, stretch and squash deformer node is fixed, right? Next, moving on to creating an attribute, okay, for this. So we have this controller which will be having an attribute. So in order to create the attribute which is going to control the stretch and squash deformer, instead of using the deformer handle, clicking it and then controlling it from here, we can directly control using the controller attribute. For that, we'll click on edit after selecting the controller, add attribute, and this add attribute dialog box opens up, option box opens up. So here we'll name the attribute as squash, since it's using a squash deformer, and there's both stretch and squash, but we'll be just naming it squash so that you know it's having both stretch and squash. You can make it either way. Next, we'll be selecting float because the value is going to change in decimals from positive to negative. So the maximum we'll be keeping it to 10 to get the extreme result, and the minimum we'll keep for -10 to get the negative or squash extreme result. So maximum gives you the stretch value and minimum gives you the squash value, and the default we can keep it as 0. Okay, so with that done, we'll just add this, just close this. So we have a stretch and squash attribute. So if you just click the middle mouse scroll along the viewport, you can see it's moving from value 10 to -10. So we'll just make it 0 for now. Let's connect controller attribute or the squash attribute to this actual squash deformer node, right? So for that we'll be using the connection editor. So select this controller, go to Windows, go to General Editors, scroll down to Connection Editor. So the Connection Editor window opens. So under this we have the load left and the load right. So left is basically the controller and right is the node which it is going to control. Okay. So once we select this controller, we will see the controller's attributes over here. We are going to connect the squash. So we'll select on the squash, click on squash. So that gets highlighted for load left. For load right, we will click on the squash handle. We need to click on the squash 1 node over here. Once that's selected, load right. So the squash 1 node will be loaded, and we need to connect the squash attribute over here, okay, of the controller to the factor, okay, because the factor is going to control the stretch and squash. So simply we'll just click on the factor, and as soon as you see the connection is made, the difference is normally the text is normal text, okay. Once the connection is made, it changes to italics. You can see it's changed to italics. So if I click once more, it's disconnected, okay, and if I click on factor, it's connected. And another change over here, you can see over here the factor gets a key, kind of yellow key, so that's connected, right? You can just close that window. It's done now. So now this controller with the squash attribute has been connected to the squash handle over here, right? So you can simply use this to animate ball for stretching and squashing, okay, stretch and squash, okay. So you can go to the extremes of 10 and you can come to the extreme of -10 where it is completely flat along the grid almost. So we'll keep this at 0 for now. And the basic rig is done. The few more things are remaining. First thing first, we don't want extra attributes over here. So this for this controller, basically this is the stretch controller, so we need only the visibility and the stretch. So we'll lock and hide rest of the attributes. So just select them and scroll down over here with the right click selected, lock and hide. So over here now we are having only stretch and squash attribute for the animation, so it will not confuse. Next, this is for rotate, right? So we don't need the translate and we don't need the scale. So we'll select translate and scale, and we'll scroll down to lock and hide selected. So we'll do lock and hide selected. Okay, so now we have only the rotate attributes over here. Next, for the main controller, we leave all because we need to move, rotate and scale the main controller. So that's done. Next, let's add some color to it or some material to it to make it interesting and visually appealing. So for that, simply what I'll do is I'll assign a new material to it. So assign a blend, okay, and we'll just name this as ball, sake for shader, okay, and I'll be using a ramp node over here. So I'll connect the ramp node 6 for texture view, okay, color view, and in the ramp node I'll be using the U ramp. So you get this vertically, okay. If you want, you can create horizontals also, but I'll be just making it like this. So I'll take around 4 colors. So let's start with this. So let's make it red. Let's make this yellow. Let's make this green. And let's make this blue. Okay. Now in order to get them sharp, we just need to, you can also overlap it like this. So one more yellow, so I'll just overlap with green. blue, one more blue, just overlap it with blue. Okay, if you want you can keep the spacing equally, so just play with this to get to your desired result. Yeah, it's almost there. So with that done, we have the colors over here. You can see the 4 colors. So didn't need to do anything with the UV. Okay, you can just simply use this ramp and use U ramp and just align the colors over here. As you can see, as simple as that. If you want to take a snapshot, you can do that. So once that's done, our model is visually appealing as well. And if you want, you can just select this controller now, and we have a value of, yes, that's it, looks squashed a bit. So don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed, and please hit the bell icon so you get notification for the tutorials which are coming up. Okay, so once that's done, let's move on to the final part, which is setting up the hierarchy. So go to the outliner. Okay, so as you can see, we have all the ball mesh and the controllers and the squash handle over here. So we just need to place them properly in the hierarchy. Okay, so very simply, just be careful and follow along properly. Select the ball mesh first. Okay, and that's your rotate controller, right? So if you go to the outliner, select the ball, middle mouse, drag it under the inside the rotate controller. So the rotate controller is going to have the ball inside it. Okay, as you can see. Okay, next take the squash handle, okay, and place it inside the stretch controller. Okay, you can rename it anytime, stretch, squash. Okay, never mind. So you have the stretch controller, this one, which is having the squash handle inside it. Okay, so next is simply take the rotate controller, put it inside the main controller, take the stretch controller, put it inside the main controller. So the main controller is now housing all the controllers and the mesh and the handlets. You can see the main controller is having the rotate controller is having the ball inside it, or the geo mesh inside it, and the stretch controller is having the stretch and squash handle inside it. Okay, as simple as that. So now if we take the main controller and move it, everything moves along with it. If we scale it, everything scales along with it. Okay, so that's the thing. If we take the rotate controller and try to rotate, we can rotate it using this controller. We can rotate it along Z, okay, for showing the motion along this axis. Okay, we can also spin it this way, and once this is selected, we can easily go to this squash handle, squash attribute, and we can stretch and squash it using the stretch and squash deformer and this attribute, right? So once that's done, one last thing, select the mesh. Let's create a separate layer for it so that we don't select it all the time while selecting the controller by mistake. We don't select the mesh. Now go to a layer, and you can name this layer as ball. Save it and just click over here till you get R or reference. Okay, so this reference, now it's a reference layer, so anything in that layer will not be selected while working. Okay, although it's visible if you select it like this, but you can't select it separately, so you will not damage the mesh unknowingly. So keep a note of these small tips of locking and hiding stuff, of keeping the hierarchy properly, and yeah, this layer as a reference layer for the mesh. So with that, friends, as you can see, we have come to the end of this tutorial. I hope you have liked and enjoyed and learned something special from it. If you have, then surely like and share my video. If you have any comments, let me know in the comments box. If you want to learn something else, let me know. I'll be coming out with a few more applications related to nonlinear deformer. So with this, we have completed the nonlinear deformer. For the next tutorial, let's say we'll be doing something with the rolling. Okay, subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed, and please hit the bell icon so you get the notification for the tutorials which are coming up. Thanks for watching. Bye bye. Take care.